Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm just doing a quick sound check. If those out there in Python land, if you can let me know if you can hear me, okay. Let me increase the sound just a little bit and see if I'm coming in loud and clear. Okay, excellent. Hi, hello, Mike. Good to see you again. Hi, Jim. Just gonna wait 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. Excellent. Okay, I will get started. So tonight, the first half hour is an orientation session on Python level 2. The topics that I'm going to cover is I'll just mention briefly that we're in an age of AI, what that means, and what the opportunities are in developing your skills. Then I'm going to run through very quickly Python level 1 curriculum. A number of you have been attending the sessions on Python level 1, and I'm just going to recap the curriculum for that. And then what we're here for tonight is a review, a perspective of curriculum overview of level 2. This is if you plan to carry on for the next few weeks, what level 2 is going to look like. And then I'll finish up with there are two ways in which you can engage, two modes of study. One I call self-directed or self-guided, and then the other one is a guided study. And I'll say a little bit more about that. And then we'll just kind of finish up with next steps. All right. And then at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to do essentially a code session on review of level 1. So exposed you to a set of concepts in level 1, and this is going to test out your knowledge of level 1. Now I'm going to push the envelope a little bit, just to get a sense of, are you getting it, not getting it, but it will be illustrative of the types of things that you want to be able to do once you have initially developed an elementary understanding of Python concepts. And so that'll be a recap of the concepts covered in level 1, but from the point of view of a real application, or something like a real application that you might end up developing. Okay, so age of AI. And we are rushing headlong into the age of AI. This is not whether it's going to happen, but it is happening, and this is accelerating at a breakneck speed. And really, this is what economists call AI is a general purpose technology. It already has hit a couple of inflection points, and it's now going to transform, and it is transforming really every industry, and our entire economy now is going to be based on AI. Some of you might have heard about recent summit in the UK representing AI, directives from the Biden administration on AI, competition between China and the U.S. But every country pretty much knows that if they're going to stay competitive, we are living in an age of AI. So one of the is now totally up for grabs. So I believe that there are three essential skills that you need to learn. I'm going to make a point that the greatest need will be not technical practitioners, although that's going to be important, and I hope some of you are thinking about being technical people and being practitioners in the age of AI. However, I think the greatest opportunity and the need will be those who lead and manage AI, right? So this is, you're gonna have a solid understanding of how AI works, but you don't necessarily have to be the car mechanic to fix the cars and so on. Not to trivialize people who work on it in a technical capacity, but the greatest need, an emerging need, will be roles like product managers, tech CEOs, business leaders, who organizational leaders who understand what AI is about and can help their organizations and businesses lead the AI effort. And I call that entrepreneurial skills. Some of that entrepreneurial skills will be to start companies. It's going to be there's tremendous opportunity to start your own businesses, and the barriers are really starting to come down in that area. But entrepreneurial skills also means driving your organization towards success. Now, from a technical perspective, there are three skills that I think people need to have. Programming, but Python is really the de facto programming language for AI. And we can get into reasons why I feel that way, but in my opinion, Python is the glue language. It's the foundational language. Just as an example, ChatGPT, the company behind it, OpenAI, they just had a developer conference about a week ago, made all kinds of announcements, very, very important announcements, and they all rest on being able to utilize Python. So Python is really the fundamental language of AI right now. That might change 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but the world is going to change in 5 years. So it's changing now. And the second area is data science. And then the third is AI, but particularly machine learning, right? So here I'm using AI in the sense of machine learning. So three practical skills that will go a long way if you start to lay a foundation for that. Python, data science, and AI. So this is not about learning coding. It's learning how to think computationally, how to program in Python, learning data science, data analysis, and then learning about machine learning. Now, for those of you who are aimed to be technical practitioners, your skills are going to have to be deep and wide. Those of you who are interested in leading organizations, you need to know enough technically, but also develop good business understanding, organizational understanding, cultural understanding to lead organizations. Okay, on the Python side, what I'm going to try to do and what we're going to try to do is to get people up to a foundational basic level of proficiency, and that will be at three levels: level 1, level 2, and level 3. Those of you who have been coming to the earlier sessions, and I'm going to describe the level 1 curriculum in just a minute. What we're going to start doing in the next few weeks until the end of the year will be level 2, and I'm going to describe that. Level 3 is going to just sort of solidify everything, more practice on level 1 and level 2. I'm not going to address that tonight. But if you get up to speed at these three levels, you're going to be in really good shape with Python and programming skills. And then we can turn our attention to data science and also machine learning. And we'll have courses and offerings in that area. Okay, so Python level 1, we broke it up into 14 learning objectives. Let me kind of go back. One set of learning objectives is really understanding and setting up the navigational environment your programming environment, and that's VS Code. So getting really familiar with VS Code, I describe it as the pilot's cockpit. If you're going to fly a airplane, you have to be thoroughly familiar with everything that goes on in the cockpit. Now, there's a lot more around VS Code and the cockpit and the types of instruments that you need to learn as you're becoming a programmer, data scientist, and doing machine learning. It's not part of Python level 1, but we're going to incorporate that in level 2 and level 3. And if you do data science and machine learning, you're just going to build on those skills. Let me give you a quick example of that. Knowing how to manage Git. So Git is version control and a lot more. So that's a skill that you really need to also develop as part of the instrumentation. So that's one set of learning objectives, making sure that you learn and are beginning to master the cockpit of programming, data science, and machine learning, and that's VS Code. Second, a part of level 1 was just getting familiar with some of the basic principles of programming and the basic concepts of programming, and that included primitive objects and operations, collections. There are 4 basic types of collections, fundamental idea of iteration. We had ordered collections and things like strings, which have indices. We didn't go too much into slicing. I don't think we did cover that at all, but it is an important part of how we work with data and data structures, particularly ordered sequences. And then there's the concept of iteration and branching. And then we looked a little bit at functions and a little bit of debugging. These are really the main concepts. So level 1 was just about orientation. Here's the cockpit. This is the airplane. These are the basic principles of flying. And now once we go past level 1, it's really to understand how these individual concepts, how they can be applied in the programming context. Okay, that was level 1. Level 2 is tonight we're going to do a review of Python level 1. I'm not going to talk about the concepts, but we're going to do a coding exercise. We'll imagine that we're creating an application for a fictitious bank called Star Bank, and we're going to walk through some requirements and then actually write code. Okay, and this will give you an example. I have 2 things in mind. One is to kind of give you an example of, okay, what does it mean to be a programmer? What kinds of things do you do? And we do it, so you start to get an idea of how the thinking process, the coding process, and so on. Second is really develop a sense of where my gaps are. So I might have seen, or if you didn't come to the level 1 sessions but have learned some Python, this will kind of give you a benchmark of sorts to say, how good am I following along? Is this making sense? Yeah, there's some gaps, but overall I understand and I'm able to follow along. If there are gaps, then I think it will give you some indication of the kinds of things that you're going to have to come back and what gaps to fill. Not next week. I think we'll take next week off. It's Thanksgiving week, but the week after we'll do a web development exercise, and we're going to use Python, but a library called Streamlit. And one of the things that's really happening in rapid development is now we can do lots of what used to take months and months, sometimes years of development. We can do that now very, very quickly. So I want to show you an example of how you can develop a website in Python with very little code that you'll be able to understand if you have done level one. And we're going to start off just creating a personal website, might be a portfolio website, and you can add to it a whole bunch of stuff. But my aim here in web development with Python and Streamlit is very quickly, in an afternoon, put up a website. Example that we'll use is a personal website, but it could be really any type of website, and then deploy it. Then we'll take another example. We'll extend our knowledge of Streamlit and the web development part, but we're going to graft a data analysis. And this is kind of a prelude to data science. For those of you who are interested in data science, a very important part of data science and data analysis, really anything, is being able to communicate what you're doing with your stakeholders. So if you're a data analyst, if you're a data scientist, you need to be able to show your work to people, whether it's internally within your organization or outside of it. So how can we do that? So we'll take some data sets, analyze those data sets, and I'm not going to do extensive data analysis, but I want to show you the full picture. Okay, I have a data set. I'm going to do some analysis using pandas, even some visualizations. I didn't put matplotlib and Seaborn, but we'll do that, and then use Streamlit again to put that up on a website so it's visible, right? So this is a full-blown application that you should be able to do and will be able to do. And then the next example is, all of you, I'm sure, have heard of ChatGPT, and you probably have played around with it. Some of you might have taken on ChatGPT from a developer perspective, but we're going to pose that as a question. What if I want to develop? And this is where the action is. It's OpenAI and ChatGPT are the big gorillas in this space, and they're innovating like crazy, and it's opening up and will open up all kinds of opportunities. So you can create very, very easily and quickly custom chats. So for example, if you're working for a company that's a travel agency and you want to develop a custom ChatGPT for your customers, there are ways to do that now. If you want to pull in data from sources and supplement the large language model behind ChatGPT, there are ways to do that. Add data that comes from your own organization, such as from databases, PDFs, etc. Now, we're not going to get into all of the details, but I want to kind of give you an overview of, okay, how do I take advantage of all this new technology that's being developed in the AI space, and how can I do that quickly and efficiently? All right, so the goal here is to kind of give you the big picture, landscape picture, but enough detail so that if you want to start experimenting, start building apps, you can do that. So that's going to be the goal of level 2, is to actually roll up your sleeves and start developing and experimenting. And this is going to give you ideas for new businesses. If you're thinking about product manager, business development, product development, this is where all the action is going to be. All right. And then I'm also going to do a session on mathematics. This is a challenge that I think many of us have is either we are intimidated by mathematics or have forgotten it, or kind of know it but don't know it, and it's the elephant, in many cases, the elephant in the room. And here, with everything else, we just got to take a deep breath and say, okay, we can learn it. we're going to take some small steps. So this is going to be a mathematics refresher, but we're going to do it using Python. So an example is logarithms and exponentiation. People hate logarithms. When I studied it in high school, even to some extent in college, it's like what are logs? Why do we need to do this? Well, logs they're actually quite interesting, but regardless, and it's a very, very powerful and important concept, and you have to understand what log functions are. You have to understand what functions are. You have to understand what logs are, and so on. So we're going to do a little bit of math refresher, including some advanced concepts. Deep learning is based on something called gradient descent. Very, very important part of gradient descent. Gradient descent comes from calculus, and but the basic concept of the calculus are really not all that difficult. So here I'm not gonna try to expose you to everything, but give you the primary goal is to give you two things. One is always have a big picture, kind of the landscape of what's going on, and then some enough detail so that you can begin to plug away and chip away at different pieces of this. And once you overcome the intimidation factor, and you'll start to get comfortable. And over time, this is going to be fun, and you're going to look forward to developing your knowledge of this. Okay, so that's Python level 2. In summary, tonight, in just a few minutes, I'm going to do a quick refresher review of Python level 1 through a coding exercise. Then 2 weeks from this week, probably next Thursday, not next week, but the week after, we'll take on web development with Python and Streamlit. Week after, data analysis with Python, Pandas, and Seaborn Matplotlib for visualization. And then we'll start to get into app development and APIs using ChatGPT. And we'll sprinkle in some fun math the week after that. Okay, so modes of study. There'll be two modes of study. I'm talking about if you sort of continue on with these meetups. So one mode of study is self-guided. What do I mean by that? So let me bring up a website that you'll want to get familiar with. Okay, so this is the Python for Absolute Beginners. We'll make sure we keep this updated, but all the meetup sessions will be recorded, and there's a playlist, description of the curriculum. So for example, Python level 1, and schedule. And let's go back to the main page. So the playlist of sessions, recorded sessions, we'll put up there. But it's going to be really up to you to make sure that you're following along, and then you're doing the work. And nobody's going to come after you and say, "Hey, Jim or Jane, how are you doing this week? Are you practicing? Are you learning?" Okay, so this is self-guided. So that's mode 1. Mode 2 is going to be guided. And so what do we mean by that? So pretty soon we're going to have, let me show you how that's coming along. Okay, so we have a learning environment. It's using software called Moodle. Each level, we're going to break it up, and we're breaking it up into learning objectives, clear topics that you need to learn. And the way things will be organized is first, each learning objective will have a overview, and the overview will be presented in a short video. It presents the learning objective, some basic sort of concepts. These videos are no more than 5 to 7 minutes. Anything beyond that, people tend to tune out. I tune out, and it's really hard to kind of keep up. The other thing that we're going to have is a study guide. So people like to have things written down. I like to have things written down so I can read, take on the subway, whatever. And that will be principally in the form of a PDF. So these are examples of things that you should learn and review as part of the learning objective. And then you've heard me, those of you who heard me before, this is the mantra: you learn by doing, you don't learn by viewing. So you can watch all the videos in the world, you can watch me doing stuff, but if you don't get off your whatever and start programming, you're not going to learn. Okay, so, and there's a set of skills that have to be immediately on recall. When I say, okay, what are the 3 properties of collections, you should know that in your sleep. You should be able to recite that. We're going to have lots of practice quizzes, and the goal here is, hey, stuff that you can recall. Given two Boolean variables, a equals true, b equals false, what will be the result of the expression a and b? Okay, I should know it. Now, these practice quizzes, you can take it as many times as you want. The goal here is not to test you. It's to allow you to practice, okay, and then give you feedback, because that's the only way you learn. You fail, you get feedback, and you practice, and that's the only way to learn. We will also have, so the mode is going to be, you come in, try to understand what the learning objective is, get an overview, watch the video, the concepts, read the study guide, do some practice quizzes. There also will be a study session that will present some code, reinforce the concepts, and then there'll be coding exercises that we're gonna bundle that so that they're achievable, and we'll also find ways so you can grade that. Okay, and so here's an example, one on collections, and we're going to look at collections tonight in just a minute. But there are 4 types of Python collections: lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. We're going to look a lot at dictionaries, but this study session video, some of you might have seen it, walks you through the essential concepts of Python dictionaries. Not the concepts, but we actually look at code. It's very, very important that you start to look at code and start to think in terms of code. And we'll also sprinkle in mathematics along the way, things like Git. So this will all be available to you in through this Moodle website. Starting in January, this will be paid. We're going to charge you for it because I can't do everything for free. This stuff costs money. However, we'll open up a beta program in a couple of weeks, and I want to take in about 25 people. And if you convince me that should take you in the beta program, you'll have access to all the Python stuff for free for 1 year. Now you have to show that you're working through this stuff, or we're gonna give your place to somebody else. So be on the lookout for that. This will be available to you freely. So the self-guided one will be free. We'll do meetup sessions, but the only way to learn is to actually do and practice and get feedback on your code. So and we're going to do the videos, the self-guided, the study guide, practice quizzes, homework assignments, and so on. Okay, so more on that in the coming weeks. So that's the guided versus self-guided. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat window. Now I'm going to shift gears, and we're going to start the next session, which is going to be a lightning review of Python level 1. Okay, so let me bring up VS Code. This is from the previous week, so let me actually get out of this. Okay, so we're in VS Code. I'm going to open a folder. Let me get out of this. Let me create a folder, old, and take some of these Python programs and put it in the old folder. Close that up. Okay, so what I want to try and do is imagine we're developers working at, let me, as I speak, create a document called requirements. Okay, so imagine we're at a bank called Star Bank, and Star Bank has hired us to write some programs for Star Bank. Okay, and so initial set of requirements. Well, what do we need? We need some sort of list of customers. Now, by a list, I don't mean a Python list. We have to choose how we're going to implement this, but a bank has a list of customers, right? So we need some way of tracking customers. We need a list of balances. Customers are going to open up an account or accounts, and so we need to keep track of how much money a customer has in the bank. And that's what I mean by a balance. A list of balances mean who are my customers and what's the balance in their account. Now, whenever you're writing software, in fact, this goes for many things, start in a simple way. Don't try to, at the first pass, don't try to make things overly complex, but start with something simple and then elaborate on that. I think a mistake that many people make, even seasoned developers, seasoned companies, they try to create complex software, spend years on it, and then to find out, oh, the parts don't fit. Okay, so start with something simple, then iterate on that. So we're gonna make some simple assumptions. So first, we're gonna make an assumption, for example, that there's only one type of account. We're not gonna worry about checking account, savings account, different types of accounts. There's just one account. We get a list of customers. They open an account and they have a balance. What else do we need? We need the ability to deposit and withdraw money from your account. And we might add to some stuff later, but statement of transactions. If I'm a customer, I want to know, okay, how much money did I take out? What was the activity on my account? All right, so here's a kind of starting point. And I don't want this file to be, let me move that out one level. Okay, so now before we start programming, I want to do a quick review of a couple of concepts that are going to come in as we write the program. So one of the concepts is a function, and so let's write a function. So I'm going to call this function review.py, and we're going to write a function that's going to appear in our example. And what this function is going to do is function will take as input a user name, a name, and produce as output user name. Okay, so what do I mean by this? Let's say Bruce Springsteen walks into the bank, says, hey, I want to open a account at Star Bank, and what we're going to need to be able to do is have a unique ID, a user, and we're going to use username as a unique ID. Okay, so this function is going to take the name Bruce Springsteen as input and transform it into a username. And you'll see what I mean by that when we write the function. So let's write a function. I'm going to call the function generate username. Okay, that's the name of the function. Try to give the name of the function to something that's going to be meaningful and not function X or Y and something abstract. And even if it's a long name, fine. Better that somebody understands your code, and even you understand your code when you come back to it a month from now. All right, so the function can take one or more inputs. In this case, we're going to take as input name. Okay, so we're going to input a name like Bruce Springsteen, and what the function will do is operate on that name and transform it into a user name. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is now we're going to write the code for the function, the operation performed by the function. So first thing we're going to do is we have name, and we're going to turn that into all lowercase. So there's a function that we're going to call. It's a Python built-in function. Here it's called a method, but methods are functions for those of you who know object-oriented programming. But just right now, we're going to take the string name, turn it all to lowercase. So if we input Bruce space Springsteen, Bruce B will be caps, S will be caps, and we're just going to turn everything into lowercase. Then we're going to split the string. Wherever there's a space, we're going to another function will take the lowercase version, split it into words. So if you have a sentence separated by the words are separated by space, what the split function, built-in function, does is it splits a sentence into words and then spits out a list, a Python list. Okay, so I'm going to call this names. And just so you have an idea of what this does, we still have a little bit more work to do, but let's just see where we are. Let's just print names. And so I've written the function, And let's call the function generate names, give it a name as input, Bruce Springsteen, and let's see what it does. I'm going to run the program. Okay, so when I call the function, I misspelled the function, so let's change that. Okay, so let's look below, and the result names is a list that has two elements, the word Bruce, which has been set to lowercase, and Springsteen, which has been set to lowercase. What if I were to give it the name Alicia Keys, and let me rerun it? You can see that it now prints out a list with two elements, the first name in lowercase and the second name in lowercase. Right. So what's going on here is that first it takes the string name, Alicia Keys, converts it all to lowercase. It's still the string Alicia Keys. Then it splits it into Alicia and Keys, and then bundles it as a list. And so names, if we were to do the data type for names, it's a list. Okay, now our work is not done. This is just a checkpoint to just that we're on the right track. All right, so what do we want to do with this list? So what we're going to do is we want to create another string called username. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take the first letter of Alicia. So what is that? That's the first element in names. So it has index 0. So that should bring up the word Alicia, and names square bracket 0 is Alicia. It's the string Alicia. But I don't want the entire first name. What I want is the first letter of Alicia, or the first name, and that's index 0. So that will give me A, the letter A. And what I'm going to do to that is append or concatenate a dot. And then I'm going to look into the last name, the last name, which is in the list called names. It has the index 1, and that will pull out Keys, the last name Keys, or the last name Springsteen, which I misspelled earlier, it looks like. Okay, and I don't want just the first initial of the last name, but let's say I want to pull out the first 6 letters, or the first 7 letters of, this will take me 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so this is called slicing. And now let's just print this and see what happens. Save. Now I haven't called the function, so let's call the function now with Bruce Springsteen. Okay, so we see the result is b.springs. This might be one convention that we might use to generate usernames from a full name. So it's taking the lowercase versions of everything. Now imagine if you're in the organization, we want to build email addresses, then you would concatenate the @ plus the name of if your company is gmail.com, or AI, OpenAI.com, then you would concatenate. So you could build this instead of building usernames, you might want to build email IDs, right? So we're taking a name as input. We're operating on that name, first converting it to lowercase, splitting it into first name and last name in the form of a list, then operating on the first name, just taking the first letter of the first name, concatenating period to it, and then taking the first 7 letters of the last name, and that generates the username. And instead, let's just do another example. Let's see what happens with Alicia Keys. Let's run that. Okay, so we get a username generated is a.keys as the username for Alicia Keys. Now, what we want is, we don't want to print it. We want to, let's have it returned. We're going to return the username. That will be the output of the function. Okay, so we've written now a function that inputs a name and then parses it into, or transforms it into, a username. Okay, so that's an example of a function. We're gonna utilize this function in just a minute. Now let's do a quick review of Python dictionaries. So I'm going to call this dict review. Okay, so what's a Python dictionary? A Python dictionary is a very beautiful structure. It's basically a mapping of one set to another set, elements of one set to another set. What you're mapping are called the keys, and what you're mapping to are called values. So you have 2 sets, set A and set B. Each element in set A is uniquely mapped to a set to an element in B. All right, and a Python dictionary is often referred to as a set of key value pairs. So we have a set of pairs. Okay, and dictionaries are heterogeneous, meaning you can have different data elements, data of different types as keys and as values. So now I'm going to give you an example of a Python dictionary where we're going to use usernames as the key, and the type of the username is a string. We just saw examples of that: Alicia Keys, or a.keys, b.springs as a username. So that's going to be the key. The username is going to be the key, and the value, what it's going to map to, is customer information. So we're going to create a dictionary which maps a username key to, I'm just going to call it customer information. As the value. And let me create a dictionary and add one element to that dictionary. So our dictionary is will be called customers, and this is where we're going to store. One of our requirements was a list of customers, and so we're going to store our list of customers as a Python dictionary, or in a Python dictionary called customers. So we'll give it the name customers, and it'll be a dictionary. So the way we create a dictionary is using curly braces, and our key is going to be a username. So let's assume for the moment that we have a username a.keys, Alicia Keys, that's her username. We're going to map to a value, so we need a colon. So first I write down the key, colon, and then the value. Okay, now here, customer information has multiple attributes. We have a name, we have possibly their address, but so it's going to have multiple, a place where we can insert multiple things. So we're going to have as a value another dictionary, another Python dictionary. And that's going to allow us to hold multiple attributes for customer information. Now I'm going to keep things pretty simple here. We're only going to have 2 attributes for now as customer information. We could add things like address, a place for address later on, but for customer information, we're only going to have 2 values. So I'm going to create another key, and with curly braces, and first key in my value key dictionary is going to be the name. That's the key, colon. Well, what's the name corresponding to Alicia A.Keys? It's Alicia Keys. That's the name. Then I'm going to create another key value pair and opening balance. So Alicia Keys comes into the Star Bank, says, hey, I want to open up an account. We're going to tie this up, but we generate a username for her, A.Keys. But as you know, when you walk into a bank and create an account, usually they're going to ask you for some money as your opening deposit. So let's call it opening deposit. So she comes in and brings in $50,000 as her opening deposit. Okay. And so let's just take a pause and take a look at this. We will create a Python dictionary, and that's going to store our customer list, a list of customers. We have our first customer, and now we're creating this kind of manually. Our first customer, Alicia Keys. But what we're going to use as a key in the Python dictionary is a username, and that's going to map to customer information. And we're going to have 2, and we're going to store that as another Python dictionary. And that Python dictionary will consist of two keys and 2 values corresponding to that. Alicia name is one of the keys. Opening deposit is another key. All right, so we've created a customers dictionary and added manually 1 entry called customers. Let's just go ahead and let me clear this and print customers and see what it looks like. And hopefully I didn't make any mistakes. Okay. Yeah. So, we've created a Python dictionary that we're going to use to hold customers. And we've added 1 entry. Now, let's add another customer to this dictionary. So now Bruce Springsteen appears at the bank. We already have the Python dictionary. And here we're going to we're going to give the key in Bruce Springsteen's case. Now we're doing this manually. We're going to incorporate this later on in a separate Python code. So B Springs is going to be the username for Bruce Springsteen, and now we have to provide the value that's going to correspond to that key. So this the value has to have a name. And what's the name in this case? It's Bruce Springsteen. And Bruce Springsteen comes in with an opening deposit of, say, $25,000. Let me clear this bottom, and then let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so now I have a Python dictionary with 2 elements. Now, the reason why I wanted to kind of give you this example is what makes Python dictionaries a little bit tricky also makes them very powerful. So I wanted to give you an example where the key is a string, and we're going to use usernames as strings. And then the value of the dictionary will be another dictionary that has 2 attributes, the name and then opening deposit. And we're going to insert values into that, right? So, and that's how we're going to keep track of customers. Okay, so now we're ready to begin. So this was the preliminary. I wanted to give you a sense of, let's write a function. Let's understand a Python dictionary, which is a little bit complicated. Mapping of key value pairs, but in our case, the value of our Python dictionary customers is itself a Python dictionary. Okay, now let's go ahead and write our program. So I'm going to call this just app.py. And all right, so I'm going to import a Python library called datetime. You'll see why we might want to utilize this in just a minute. And the way we're going to, let's go back to our requirements. We need a list of customers. We need a list of their balances. We'll come back to depositing, withdrawing money in just a moment. So let's go through our first couple of requirements. Go app.py. So in our program, we'll create a dictionary called customers, and it's going to be empty. Starting off, we have no customers. We just, Monday morning, bank opens up. Right now, we have no customers. Another empty dictionary, balances. No customers, no balances. All right, and that's all we're going to have for right now because we need to keep track of customers and balances. Okay, now we're going to write our first function, and our first function is the one that we had before, generate username from customer name. Okay, and I'm just going to copy and paste what we already wrote. Okay, so this function is perfect, should be perfectly good. Give me a username, and will generate give me a full name, customer name, and it will generate a username from that. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a function that adds new customer. Okay, so what is this function going to look like? So def, we always start a function by the def keyword. Let's give the function name. Well, what is this function going to do? It's going to add a new customer. They walk into the bank. We're going to ask them some questions. They'll fill out some forms, and then we need the program to add them to our customer list. So we're only going to look for 2 attributes, what their name is and their opening deposit. Okay, so 2 inputs to adding a new customer. And now what is this function going to do? All right, the first thing that we're going to do is, it's always important that we have a timestamp. When did this happen? All right, so we're going to generate a variable called DT for datetime. And we're going to use the datetime library to get the date time. Now is a function that's going to grab and give us the date and the time of now. And that's going to be different whenever I call the function. Okay, then we don't have a username, but we're going to generate the username. And how we're going to do that? Well, we're going to call the function that we wrote above it called generate username. And we're going to supply that function with the input name, which we just has an input to this function. All right, so we're defining a function now that's using a function that we wrote up above. Okay, so now we have a username. That's a new variable that we've generated based on the inputs to the function. Okay, so far so good. Now we have all the information that we need to add our customer to our customer's dictionary. All right, so our customer's dictionary, we will supply the customer's dictionary because it's expecting a key, and the key for our dictionary is going to be the username, and that's going to equal the value. And what is the value? The value is going to be name colon name we want to know the opening deposit, and what's the value for that? Well, the input to the function was the opening deposit. All right, and I think that should, something else that we want to add, which we didn't add in our earlier example when we were just considering the customer dictionary in our review. We're going to add a timestamp of when this happened. Okay, so we're going to create another attribute in our dictionary. We're just going to call it DT for date time, and the value will be we'll have attained from the DT variable up above. Okay, so now we've given enough information to add to our so far empty customers list, but as we use this function, call this function, this is how we're going to populate. All right, so that's good enough for now. I'm not going to worry about balance for the moment. Let's just see if this works. It's not going to return anything. All the function is going to do is take 2 things as input. Third variable, it's going to generate the value of the variable is generated by calling the now built-in function, the datetime now built-in function. And then we're adding a new entry to the customer's dictionary. Okay, so we should be all good to go. Let me clear the terminal window. Now, if I were to just run this as is, if there are no errors, it will just say, it will just execute the code. Now, to actually do something, I have to call the function. And so now, let's say that our first customer is in fact Taylor Swift. So she comes into the bank, new customer. We're going to provide her name, Taylor Swift, as input to the function. Taylor Swift is a billionaire, but she brings in $250,000 to open her account. That's her opening deposit. New customer. Okay. And hopefully this will work. It will add to the customer's dictionary. So after we've added her, let's print out our list of customers. And let's run this program. Okay, so it seemed to work. If we look below, we have the dictionary. It has one entry. It's kind of hard to tell from the printout. The key is t.swift, the username, and then the value is another dictionary with the attributes name, Taylor Swift, opening deposit, 250,000, and the date time. The date time looks kind of funny, but it's really 11/16/23, and it has the minutes and seconds, and there's another signature here. And there's a way to better format this that we'll get into later. But we have all the essential information that we need. Let's just, to make sure this is all working correctly, let's add 2 more customers. We'll add Bruce Springsteen. And Alicia Keys, she comes in with 75,000, maybe, I don't know, 150,000, doesn't matter. Okay, and let's print. Let me clear this and run it. Okay, so it's a little bit hard to read, but we seem to be doing okay. We've added 3 customers to our customers dictionary, and their opening deposit, as well as the timestamp, their name and their timestamp. Okay, so far so good. Let's expand this. So when we add a new customer, we're also going to add now. Our business is not finished, but we will add entries to our balances dictionary. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm just going to add an extra line to the add new customer function, and that's going to be the balance. Now we're going to write to the balances, and we'll still use username as the key. And we're not going to worry about name. We already have name in the customer thing. If we need to retrieve username to names, we're just going to use the username. And we'll create this will also be a dictionary, balance, and it's the amount is the opening deposit. And we also want a timestamp for this one, DT. All right, so let me clear this terminal window and comment out, or let's just change the print to customers to print balances. Now let's run this. Okay, so here, now we're looking at a different dictionary. This is giving me the balance held by a particular individual. Okay, I know this is for some of you, this is going to be a little bit overwhelming, but I want you to get a feel for, okay, I've learned about collections, I've learned about indices, I've learned about functions. This is the kind of thing that slowly you're going to be able to do with enough practice. Okay, so where are we? We have to go back to our requirements. We need a way of list of customers and a list of balances. The way we actually implemented our list is a dictionary. So we have a dictionary of customers and a dictionary of balances. Now we need a way to deposit and withdraw money. And this is going to be pretty straightforward. So let's write those also as new functions. Okay, so we're going to write a function. We'll just call it deposit. And we need username. So we've stopped using names. We're going to use usernames as kind of a way of keeping track of who. I know some of you are already thinking, oh, how can we make sure that usernames are unique? Okay, that's a check that we didn't put in place. So as you're developing software, you want to make sure you're keeping track and writing down assumptions as you go. Because if you're not careful, that can come and bite you, come back to bite you later on. Right? We blithely assume that whenever we generate a username, it's going to be unique. And the way we have these mappings, it assumes that you're going to have a unique, every time you have a unique customer. But let's just say that two people with the same name come in, they're going to get the same user ID. So we're going to have later on, not tonight, but make sure we're keeping track of that or have a way to mitigate that. Okay, so for deposit, somebody comes in, wants to deposit, we need their username and the amount, okay? And that's, let me spell amount. And what is this function going to do? Well, again, let's get our timestamp. Let me just copy and paste this. We want to know when this happened. This is a bank. Okay, so now we are going to take the dictionary balances, check the key, update the entry in the dictionary with the username. Oops, sorry, I'm not. So if it's A Keys who's making the deposit, we're going to retrieve her dictionary entry with her username. And that pulls in a dictionary, right? The balances dictionary contains balance as well as a date time stamp. So what we're going to do is we only want to work on or update what's in the balance part of the dictionary. And so we're going to say balance here. And increase that. Now, let me write out the full version of this, and then I'm going to provide a short. So what we're trying to do is, if Alicia Keys has 100,000 currently in her balance, and she comes in with 25,000, then we're going to add to balance the amount that she came in and made a deposit. And so the new value for balance is the old value plus amount. Now there's a shorthand way of writing this that you're going to see, and we just say plus equals amount. Okay, So this is a shorthand way of updating a particular variable. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And I think, oh yeah, we also have to update or for the deposit, we need to, in the balance, update the key for date time. So, it's username. And here we can just say DT. Okay, now some of you are probably just having no problems getting this, and others of you are lost. You understand what a dictionary is, but I've really pushed it because I'm using as keys strings, the username, and the value is itself another dictionary. And then now we're going into the second dictionary, the value dictionary, and changing things inside of it. Okay, and this is where these two square brackets kind of come in, and that is likely to call for confusion. I know it was very confusing for me when the first time I was kind of going through learning it, so that's natural. But I want to kind of get, okay, this is the kind of thing that you're going to have to, that will come to you only through repeated practice, first starting with simple examples and then more complex examples. Okay, so now we've written a function for deposit. Hopefully that should be it. We're not returning anything. We're just updating the balances held by a particular user. Okay, so now let's, we will pretend as before we have 3 customers, and now we have 3 new customers come in. Now Taylor Swift makes a deposit. This time we have to use her username, which is T Swift. And let's say she had a very successful tour recently, I heard, and she's going to put in 150,000 more into the bank. And let's just check now deposits and run. Oops. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm talking to myself. We want to check balances. The dictionary's balances, not deposits. Okay, so let me clear the screen and run it again so you can see it better. Okay, so what have we done? Taylor Swift, if we look at her balance now, her balance is 400,000. Bruce Springsteen is still 100,000, still has the original balance. And then Alicia Keys also has 150,000. Let's add just one more deposit by B Springs. Let me run it. And now we see that Bruce Springsteen, his balance has gone up to 125,000. That's a sum of 100,000, his initial opening deposit, and 25,000. Okay, so that's deposit, but people, of course, will be withdrawing money. So let's write a new function. I'm just going to copy and paste deposit because that's pretty much the template that we're going to need for the withdraw. The only difference between deposit and withdraw is instead of adding the amount, we're going to subtract the amount. Okay, so that's minus equals. If you were to write out fully, it's the variable equals what was in the variable, the old value, plus the change, and that's the new value. And this is a shorthand way of updating a particular variable by the thing amount. I'm subtracting amount from my balance for corresponding to the username. All right, so I should have the withdraw function, and let's say that let's add a few more. Deposit a keys 33 and withdraw T Swift. Let's do funny number. Okay. All right, so clear screen again, run it. And so Taylor Swift has 377,000, looks right. Bruce Springsteen has 125,000. Let's see, 100,000 he added, and then 25,000 deposit, so 125,000. That looks right. Alicia Keys, 150,000. 33,000. Taylor. Yeah, Alicia Keys, 33,000 deposit. Yeah, so that's 150,000 plus 33 is 183,000. So that looks right. So we have, go back to our requirements, list of balances, deposit and withdraw money, and statement of, okay, what does this mean? All right, so we're going to, actually, before I get to that, I'm going to introduce another topic and clean up some things. Let's go back to our application. So I've written a bunch of functions. So we have functions that we're calling that we didn't write, or you didn't write as you were programming. So datetime is a library or a package that has a set of functions. We called on one of the functions called datetime. Is a function. It's actually a sub package within datetime. The function that we called was now, and what the now function does is it retrieves for us the date time at the time that you call it. Okay, so we utilize that function. We also used some other functions like lower and split. Those are part of the Python library. We didn't write those functions. And a signature of a function is these parentheses. Anytime you see like lower, split, and you see the round parentheses or now, those are functions. And we're calling on those functions. Sometimes we don't supply any values. Print is a function with parentheses. So sometimes we insert arguments or input to the functions. So those are examples of functions that are built-in functions or imported functions. And now we've written a whole bunch of functions ourselves, add new customer, deposit, withdraw. And now we have the program itself where we're calling those functions. Now all of a sudden it's starting to get really cluttered. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. First, I'm just going to copy this and paste. So it's just made a duplicate. I'm going to rename this to SB for Starbank. Let me just delete this other stuff. Okay. I'm going to break up our program into two parts. One I'm going to call sb.py, and that will only have our functions. And I'm just going to remove all this stuff from sb.py. Okay. Let's just take a look at this. So this file sb.py has import datetime, our data structures, customers, and balances, and then all of our functions are here. When we started to call the functions, I deleted those. And I'm going to go back to app.py, and from that, I'm going to delete the stuff that's in sb.py. So imagine now sb.py is what you wrote as a programmer, and this is another program that's actually calling the functions that you wrote and for adding new customers, depositing, and withdrawing. Okay, so we split up the program now into two parts. This is now a package that I can import. So now I just need to make one modification here. I can't just, if I just call the function, it's not going to know, because it doesn't know what add new customer is anymore, because it's not in my program app.py. So what I'm going to do, if I want to make use of it, I'm going to say import SB. Okay, so I want the data and the functions that are available or that are in SB. I want to import those. And now I have to precede these functions with SB. So where am I looking for this function? Well, it's in the file that I just imported. So every time I call this function, I have to precede it with SB. I know I'm covering a lot of ground, but I want us to move to a mode of writing programs, and this is what Python level 2 is going to be about. Okay, we know about functions, we know about dictionaries, we know about collections, we know about different data types, but now as we start to put these into practice, this is how some of the nuances that are going to come along, and you're only going to get used to it, familiar with it by practicing, starting off with simple examples and kind of building up gradually. Okay, so I'm now calling these functions from within app.py. Let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so something's happening here. Let me go back to sb.py. Do I have any print statements here? I'm not sure why it printed. Let's just clear this. Okay, now suppose I wanted to print my list of customers and balances, and I'll go back to app.py. And if I were to just say print balances, let's see what happens. Just print balances. I don't know what balances is. Well, balances is over here in sb.py. As it was kind of going through, it was updating this dictionary, but that dictionary is in SB-Py. It's not available to me in app.py. So I'm going to write a new function here called, let's call it def get customers. It's not going to need any inputs, and all it's going to do is return. When I call that function, it will return the list of customers. It's a very simple function. When I call it, it's going to give me the list of customers. Okay, so now let me save this. Go back to app.py. SB, I want the function get customers. Okay, I should now should have the dictionary of customers. What do I want to do with it? Let's just print it. Oops. I think I may not have saved it, so let's just do this again. Okay, yeah, so it works now. Now I have, as I'm adding stuff, the customer dictionary is in different area, and I'm now created a function where I can retrieve what's in the customer's dictionary. All right, let's do the same thing for balances. Oops. Save. Let's call, I'll comment this out. Call get balances. Oh, I have to put SB. And let's see if it works. Yep. So now I have their balances. Okay. Let's do how we're doing on time. We're at 8:30. I'm just gonna go on for a few more minutes, and then we'll wrap things up. Okay. So let's now. Anytime I write a new function, now I'm gonna do it on SB. That's gonna have my store of all the functions that I'm writing. Okay, so now let's write a new function, and this was part of my requirements, was statement of, not statement of transactions as such, but let's call it a customer report. Well, actually, I should add, let me add one other thing before I do the customer report. And this is going to be important. Let's go back a little bit. Okay, I have a list of customers. I list of balances. Then we wrote functions to deposit and withdraw money. Okay, that's pretty good. Pretty good for an hour of programming. We have bit of the heart of what we're up to. One, some of you might have noticed this already. If we look at balances, let's go to the function. Let's just take a look at balance. What does the balance, when we write to the balances dictionary, it's just changing someone's balance, right? Okay, so Taylor Swift comes into the bank with $250,000. The record of that transaction went into the customer's dictionary. We also stored it in balances as $250,000. So we have a record of it in balances. Then she came back and deposited $150,000. And what did we do? Well, what we did was we just changed her deposit amount in the deposit dictionary to $400,000. Okay, but we have no transaction history. Okay, we just updated her balance. What if somebody hacked balances and changed it by some amount? And how do we know it was correct, right? So this is highly problematic from an audit perspective. We should have something that keeps a record of all transactions that go on in the bank, and in some way, and we're gonna have to find ways to make sure that that transaction log is highly secure. Other people and other paths can't get to it. And if we need ever to, if Taylor Swift comes back and challenges, say, wait a minute, I did a deposit of 1 million, and my balance is showing, we have no audit trail for transactions. Okay, so I'm gonna just add this, and we're gonna create another thing called transactions. If you hang around for 5 more minutes, we'll finish this up. And this is going to be our transaction log that's going to record every transaction. Okay, so we're going to start off with an empty dictionary in transactions. First time we're going to call on the transaction log is when we create the new customer. At that time, we will actually, let me, I think what we'll do is write a function called write transaction. Okay, so this is a function that we're going to call to write to the transaction dictionary. And what we'll need in the function is the username. We'll need the transaction type. We'll need the amount, and we'll need the date time. Transaction type, by that we mean, is it a withdrawal? Is it a deposit? Was it an opening deposit? There might be different types of transactions, so we'll record the type. Okay. Now a transaction log should have a unique ID, and this time we're going to be a little bit more careful about that. And so we're going to generate a transaction ID, and that's going to be a simple idea. We're going to start with the length of the transaction log. and we'll add 1 to it. So every time we write a new entry in the transaction log, it will have a unique ID based on next number available in the sequence. And we'll get that from the length of the transactions. Okay, so that will be the transaction ID. And now we're ready to write. What this function will do is the transaction dictionary will have as a key the transaction ID. That will be the key. The value will be another dictionary, username as the key. The value will be the username provided by the function. Transaction type will be transaction. Oops. Amount will be amount. And finally, we do need date time. Let's put this on another line. Okay, so that should be good to go with writing the transaction. Let me just compile this or run it just to make sure that, okay, yeah, there is a mistake here someplace. Ah, this is missing a colon. Okay, so hopefully the function, I wrote the function appropriately. Now we're going to call when we add a new customer, we're going to call the write transaction function and give it the information that it needs. So the write transaction, we're going to give it the username, the opening deposit, let's make sure I have the, okay, it's transaction type. Okay, so for transaction type, for opening deposit, we'll give it a string opening deposit. That will be the transaction type. Then the amount will be the opening deposit. And date time will be just date time. Okay, now let's go ahead and run this. Okay. All right. And one more thing. And now here, let me call voila. Okay, it's a function. I need to have parentheses. Okay, so it's recorded the transactions for the opening deposit. Hang with me for 2 more minutes. We need to also make sure we write to the transaction log when we're depositing money and withdrawing money. Okay, so we're going to say write transactions. Let me just cut and paste here to save time. Write transaction, username, transaction type in the case of a deposit is deposit. The amount will be the amount of the deposit. Let me put the same thing when somebody withdraws money. Okay, and clear, save. Go back to app and let's get the transactions. Okay, a little bit hard to see, but now we have a transaction log. Next time when we start the other app, I will, or I might do this in the recording, I'll update it and provide a function that kind of cleans this up so that it's more readable, both for customers and for other people. Right? Okay, so let me end on that note. Just one other final comment. So just recap. Our requirements was Starbank. We need to keep track of customers. Customer comes in. The use case, the flow is Taylor Swift comes in, wants to open an account. We create a user ID for her. We record her opening deposit. We only have one type of account for now. We record then we have a separate dictionary called balances that updates the balances for each customer. We wrote functions to deposit and withdraw money. The balances dictionary gets updated as deposits and withdrawals happen. We then also created an important transaction log so that every transaction is recorded with a timestamp for creating the opening account, opening deposit, and every time a deposit and money is withdrawn from the account. And we have the basis for doing customer report on balances if we want to do, if we want to provide Taylor Swift with all of her transactions, we can begin to do so. It's just a matter of formatting it appropriately. Okay, so I will come back and next time we will also have more information on the guided path so that if you do want to update your skills on Python 1, if there's things here that don't make any sense, and again, I said you have to practice functions, iteration. We didn't do examples of branching, but all the concepts that were in Python level 1, we're going to provide you with a mechanism in the guided pathway in a couple weeks. Also, next week we're going to take a break for Thanksgiving, and then we're going to schedule the next set of sessions so that it's on your calendar. And thank you for joining. We will have a record of this available to you in a couple of days. We'll post it on the same website as you came in. All right, so thank you for joining and hanging in there, and hope to see you again soon. Take care and have a good night.